All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Richie Scholl from Worthington Distribution, and we want to spend about an hour today on Fibaro, specifically the Home Center 2, but we're also going to cover a little bit of the Home Center Lite and how they work together. We have quite a spread for you today, and we're going to really go through some demos. We have a really brief PowerPoint presentation. We kind of wanted to take you through kind of the finer points and how certain things work and capabilities, what Fibaro is, those kind of things. But I think first we'll start with a demo to really kind of give you a picture of what the system is, what it's all about, what it can do, and then we'll kind of get in through there. First of all, as always, we really appreciate you guys taking your time to join us this morning. We have, I think, a really interesting thing here. A little bit of background on Fibaro before we start on the demo. Fibaro, this system is really kind of the modern take, it's today's take on the full complete automation system. And what we wanted to show you today is our idea of the ideal Fibaro system and how to really implement that and go ahead and run with it. We assume a lot of the people who are joining us today and a lot of our customers and dealers in general have done automation for at least some time, and it has certainly changed over the years. This is a system that is at its core rooted in ZWave. It does a lot more than just that, but it does have ZWave. We're going to talk about why that's a good thing, how that can work for you even in larger applications and in larger deployments. So we'll go through a lot of that and try to make it clear for you and kind of really show how this is the modern system that gives you a lot of the things that we've been hearing you're looking for. So we'll get into it. First thing right in front of me here, I have my mouse, but this is the Fibaro Home Center 2. This is kind of the brains of the system. It's the larger of the two controllers that Fibaro makes. We have our built-in ZWave external antenna. Quick note on that. One thing that we've noticed is the hubs that have the external antennas, it really does make a difference. We get tremendous range and a really reliable ZWave network. So we like to have that, and that's in it. As we kind of move around, on this side we have a Leviton Visia RF Plus lighting display. So we've got most of the devices that we're going to focus on are these two here, which are your universal dimmers. That's your Leviton VRMX1. That's going to be a universal, so you have incandescent, halogen, LED, CFL, and it runs those all really well. So we have that. In addition, on that display, we do have an AOTech plug-in dimmer, just to kind of show a little bit of different things we can do. As we come across the front with some of the other Fibaro devices, this is the Fibaro button. We'll talk about that more as we go, but this is a really unique device. It's one of those when you first look at it, you say, what's the big deal? It's a button. What do we do with it? Well, it's available in about 8 different colors. Comes with a sticky ring, or you can actually put screws through it to mount this ring to anything and then kind of stick it anywhere. And it responds to actually 6 different inputs: single tap, double tap, all the way up through 5 taps, and then also push and hold. So if you push and hold that down for more than a second, you get another function out of that. So really cool device. Again, comes in all different colors. The neat thing is that can do anything. It can arm your security system. It can turn lights on and off. It can lock and unlock doors. Anything on the system can be triggered by that. And the more you start to think about it, you start to realize, hey, we can really put this in a couple different locations and do some really cool stuff with it. It's just kind of a new modern take on user input to the system. As we move across, we've got the Fibaro motion sensor. About a golf ball size sensor. It does come with a mount, so we can stick it to a ceiling or a wall. Again, screw mount or double stick tape comes with it. So a really cool thing about this is more than just a motion sensor. It will detect motion. It'll detect movement or shock, so if it gets moved, you can get a different signal from it. And it has a temperature and a light sensor in it. So we can get a lot of feedback from this device and use it to trigger a lot of different events. Next, we have the door window sensor from Fibaro. Really cool about this, also it comes in just a huge variety of colors. Aside from that, kind of standard fare. It's got a tamper switch on the back, regular door window sensor from there. We do also have a remote input on that, so we can use additional sensors on it, and we can also hook a temperature sensor into it. One place that we find that really useful, and we've done this in a few applications in the past, there is a temp sensor that we can supply you with that has like a 6-foot waterproof cord on it and a stainless steel waterproof sensor on the end. We've had integrators use that specifically in commercial applications, in freezers and refrigerators for restaurants and stores. And they'll put that in there, and they want to watch if the freezer goes too warm or too cold. It's a great application for that. Plus, the door sensor still functions, so you can do things like if the door is left open for more than 30 seconds or something like that, you can kind of go in and and send some notifications based on that. Next, we have the flood sensor, and that's this device. The flood sensor will let you, sense water, but it also has a temp sensor built into it as well. So we'll get into this. You've got your 3 prongs in the bottom, which is where it senses the water. Very little amount of water will actually set this off. Next we have, this is actually the 2 gig or linear stat. We have another ZWave door window sensor, and here we have the Fibaro Home Center Light. We're going to talk about that in kind of the under the heading of how it connects to the Home Center 2 and how we can use those both together. We've got a Grandstream IP phone. We have a Yale deadbolt. This could be a deadbolt or a lever set. It could be a Yale, a Quickset, or a Schlage. They all work really well. So as far as the demo goes, let's go through and do a few things with the system on its own. Then we're going to switch into the screen and let you see where we can actually see the interface. Actually, we'll hop right into the interface now. Okay. Let's see the interface for a second here. Excuse me while I get that running for you. Looks like it logged out on me. Okay, so here's your main Fibaro interface. We'll go through and do a few things here. The first thing I want to show you is, and this is why we like to use the Leviton VisiRF Plus for the lighting, is just the sheer speed of it. So I'm going to turn it off. That you would expect. When you try to turn it on and off from the interface, it does really run very quickly. But the other thing that we want to see is the reverse. So if I go ahead and turn this one on here, keep an eye on the interface now, and you'll see really quickly we'll get feedback in there. That just showed us as on. So the reason that's important is if you want to do any sort of scene or rule based on the status of a light, it's nice to use devices that send out their status immediately because you get that really quick status update that you can run your scenes on. You might be having a little trouble with the camera, but we're going to run through on the screen. And bear with me one second. We're going to keep on going right through this. So that was the lighting. Next thing is the button. The way we have this one set up is to do a couple different lighting loads. So if I do a single tap on it, you'll see the other light will come on. Do a single tap again, that one will go off. And if I double tap it, we have the other light going on and off. The way that works, and we'll show you this on the screen pretty soon, this is going to be, we're using the toggle device. So our options when we set this up are, when we have a press on this, turn the light on, turn it off, or toggle it. If I use the on or off, no matter how many times I keep pressing it, I'm just going to have that light go on, if I use the on command. By using the toggle command, no matter what state this is in, we can do the reverse. The other option I have here, I'm going to go ahead and unlock that lock. If I hold this button down, that's how I have it set up, you'll see the door will lock. So now we have that over on the door. Again, if you kind of redirect your attention to the interface on your screen, if you can see the Fibaro up there, we have one here called Yale Door. Again, you can see just how quick we are. So I'm going to unlock the door right now, and automatically or instantly we get that kind of feedback. I can hit the lock button, and we have the door locking. Really quick on that. So that was the button. If we go now to the motion sensor, and we can kind of come down to the room that's got the motion sensor in it, and that's right here in the kitchen. You see it says we last had motion a few seconds ago. We're also getting a light reading, 222 lux. That's really neat for doing different things through scenes as far as where we want the shades, let's say, or the lights in a room. So we can automatically set this up so that if the light gets below a certain threshold, the natural light in the room, then we start to turn on the lights to a certain dim level or however you want to set it up. So you have that. In addition, we have the temperature. We'll come back in a moment to why that's really important and why it's nice to have that temperature reading from every single device and how it shows up in the interface and really gets you just a ton of detail. So we've got that. Next is the water sensor. Again, pretty standard fare there, but the other thing I want to point out is, we have the flood sensor here and it's showing us that we're fine. But then next, we've got the temp sensor coming out from it. So we have another temperature reading in another room just because we have a flood sensor there. So you can kind of imagine, if we stuck the flood sensor in a utility room, maybe there's a water heater down there, we could obviously do some rules to say, hey, when we get the flood condition in that room, we certainly want a notification, but without installing any additional devices, we can also do some temperature readings. So we say if the temperature goes below a certain reading, send me another notification, or make a text message, something like that. So we're getting that all out of one device. Moving along, we've got the Rust Sound X source here. We're going to show you in a few moments how the Fibaro interfaces into that. Actually, we might as well hop right into it. If I go up here to this room called Office, we call this one Pool Streamers. So that's the name that we set in the Rust Sound configuration for this, and Fibaro automatically pulled it. Right here, I just have a volume slider. But if I go in to this button where I expand control, you can see what's playing right now. We can turn it on and off, and we also have kind of a few options for sources for what we want to play. So we'll show you a couple things here. Right now, we're on this K-Rock station. I'm going to go down to the favorites, and we'll go to a different one. And it'll change over. And actually, another thing I wanted to show you, we're going to go to the Rust Sound app for a second from here. If I go to this, right now I'm going to turn the streamer off. So I just did that, and you'll see immediately here the off is lit up. So I'm now going to go to a different favorite, and you'll see it change over. And these are the favorites that are built right into the Rust Sound app. So the reason I want to show you this, we don't have any speakers hooked up. It's kind of a tough thing to demo. We want to show you the quickness of response time between the actual Rust Sound app and the Fibaro integration. So it's now loading up here. Now it's on this 98.5 KRZ. We set up a scene earlier on the button. If I do a triple tap on this, so 1, 2, 3, and keep an eye on that. Now it just switched over, and it's going to play a different favorite, which happens to be back to that K-Rock. So again, the integration that Fibaro's got with the Rust Sound is so good that using a Fibaro ZWave button, we're now initiating a favorite on the Rust Sound system. Really cool stuff, and it really makes for just a really tightly integrated, really nice, easy-to-use system. So we've got that. I'll go ahead and turn this off, and we'll show you how that comes in a minute. So that was that part. Next part is the Global Cache iTach. This is something that a lot of installers are familiar with. It's been out there for a long time. Rock-solid products, and at their core, they're really very simple. What the iTach does is it takes Ethernet commands in and sends out either serial or contact closure or IR commands. In my case, I've got an IR unit here, and Fibaro's got something called virtual devices, and one way we can use those virtual devices is to control media gear, home theater gear. So if I go into this one here, and again, I have this button to expand the control, this is a really basic little remote that we built. So in this case, we can say power on or off, volume up or down, channel, and we have our digits there. And what that does for us is it's a really quick, easy way to control home theater all in one app. So again, we're kind of back to this answering questions that we've been getting from dealers over the years of how do we do things all in one app, all in one system. This is one way to do it. But keep in mind, because this is all integrated, this is not just for instantaneous control from the app. You can do that, but in addition, we have this whole scenes and rules architecture built in. So we can say, when we hit a certain number of taps on the buttons or a certain input to the swipe panel, we can put the lights to a certain level, you close the shades, and turn on the home theater system all in one rule. So really, really cool stuff. So that's what we have over here. One thing I wanted to go back to, I guess I skipped past it, is the Fibaro Swipe. This is a product that really kind of needs a little bit of explanation. I've got ours plugged in with USB power just because it's in an area where I can also battery power it. But basically, all this device is, it's meant to be told a picture frame. So what you're looking at in the middle here, is the actual swipe unit. This panel actually comes out, and we can mount that under a kitchen counter or behind a wall and actually hide this. But then we can put our own picture in it. This is just kind of magnetic, holds back together, and it's good to go. So we've got the table stand, and we're here. So if we kind of take a broader look at this, if we swipe up with it, I've got it into setup mode now because I was touching it. We'll let it clear out. Okay. If we swipe up, our lights come on. If we swipe down, our lights go off. And then we also have it set up with the lock. If we swipe one direction, we're going to unlock the lock. And if we swipe the other direction, we'll lock the lock. This is a relatively inexpensive piece. And again, this is Fibaro's modern take on automation and really just creative and really neat user interfaces. We're used to the smartphone apps and tablets. We're used to in-wall touchscreens. But as we kind of move forward with more modern home design and just more modern systems, we're starting to see a trend more and more away from devices that are mounted to the wall and that are permanent. So we're seeing less and less of cutting a big hole in the wall and putting a touchscreen in and that sort of thing. So we want to try to find out moving forward, how do we continue to let our users interact with the system? The button and the swipe are two phenomenal ones. Button's really inexpensive, stick them all over the place. Swipe, again, is a relatively inexpensive piece. And again, I want to reiterate, tabletop is great. It can wall mount. Fibaro's actually got a really neat graphic where they show it on a wall in with kind of a collage of family pictures. So it almost blends in and you don't even know it. But if you walk past it and you put the right pattern of swipes in, you can arm or disarm your security system or turn the lights on or do a welcome home scene, anything you want. In addition, the last thing that I kind of glazed over, they wanted to put a little more emphasis on, if we take this device and mount it under up to 2 inches of hard surface countertop, so marble, granite, the quartz surfaces, anything like that, it will still read your input. So what's really cool is think about like a kitchen island type of an application where people might be making cookies or baking or whatever they're doing at the island, and you want to turn the volume up or down or change the music or mute it. With your gestures into the swipe, you can do that, but the device isn't even on the counter; it's under it, so it's completely invisible. So another really cool piece there. So at this point, I think that's kind of a really basic overview. I think there's a couple more things, though, that we'd like to go through on some of the devices and how they react through programming, and then we'll get into the PowerPoint. So one thing I want to show you is the water sensor, just how kind of important that one is. I'm going to take this. I have a dish of water here, so I'm going to put that in. And you'll hear it start to beep. That's what you get right away. And then also in a moment, we're going to watch out for a push notification. So I just got it on my watch, actually. That's Apple Watch. And at the same time, we're going to have it come up on the phone. I'm going to take that out of there so we're not listening to the beeping anymore. But a couple things to note that we get here. We get an actual push notification. So yes, we can do emails and texts, but the push notification comes through very quickly. And I find that they kind of stick out a little more. It says water in the basement. Rather than just a text message that kind of gets blended in with all your other text messages, I think the push notifications really stand out. So it's kind of a nice way to do it. So we like that. Now keep in mind, we can arm and disarm these sensors, but we have the water sensor set so that no matter what state it's in, whether somebody arms it or disarms it or anything like that, it's always going to let you know about what you've got going on as far as a water leak. Next thing I want to talk about is in relation to the door sensor. If I open the door now, I have one light turn on. If I close it, nothing happens. The only rule I wrote was when the door is breached, in Fibaro speak, breached means open, turn on the light. So I'll turn it off manually. And let's have a look on the interface again. That front door is down here. It happens to be stuck in a room called bedroom, but we called it front door. So here it is. When I open that, you're going to see the door show as open. And when we close it, you'll see it show as closed. But you also see this arm and disarm button there. Again, I'm going to close that, turn that off. I'm going to go ahead and arm it, which didn't require any other input other than clicking on arm. And now I'll open it again, and we'll see we get something fairly different. So now both lights came on. That's to simulate that if somebody were away and the front door was breached, we would want all the lights in the house to come on. So as many lights as we have. And now also, I just got another notification on my watch, and it's on the phone again. This one says front door breached. So we've got that on the phone, same as the other notification. What's important about this is kind of how the arm and disarm works. So I'll show you. We're going to go ahead and disarm now. It's asking for a PIN code. I'm going to put in 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll show you as we get into the configuration later how that PIN code works and where you get to set them up. So there's a couple things on this. So what we have set up here, is this a real, a full-featured monitored security system? No, it's not. And I'm not going to try to, pass it off as one, but I do want to tell you what it does do. We get, again, a lot of feedback from the dealers that we talk to every day that say, I have a lot of customers who want to know when somebody's in their house, if they're not there. They want to know if it's been broken into, but they don't want a full-featured security system. It's not that they're against sensors or against a keypad. It usually comes down to the monthly fee. They're willing to buy equipment. They're willing to have equipment installed, but the monthly fee a lot of times is kind of a breaker for some customers. So with a system like this, we still get our full-featured automation. We get our full remote access and everything else, but we can put a couple of sensors in, whether they're door window sensors, motion sensors, any kind of security type sensor that we want. We can put them in. We can arm them through this interface right here, and it works kind of like a security system. If they're armed, then you're going to get a notification. But if you have them disarmed, when somebody just walks in and out of the front door when you're there, and you're okay with that, then it's not going to bother you with the notifications. Couple more things on that. The next logical question here is, let's say I've got 30 door window sensors and 5 motions. Do I have to arm them all individually? No, you don't. We have a pretty small system here, so we just thought it was easier to show you this way. There's a feature built into Fibaro called the alarm, the Fibaro alarm, and in that case, you can basically group all the sensors that you want together, and they act more as a typical security system. You can arm and disarm them together. We can actually show you how to start to build in some entry delays and exit delays. A lot of things you can do there and make it work kind of like people are used to a security system operating. Next question would be, what about a siren? Absolutely. AOTech, there are a couple other brands that have really good, very loud sirens, and the nice thing is they just plug into the wall, so I can put multiple sirens in around the house and really cover it really well with that loud noise to kind of scare off an intruder, which is another thing that people ask for. So yes, we can do that, and again, it's through rules. We can say either when any sensor is breached, then set off the siren, or we can look at the alarm in its overall state if any part of the alarm is breached. So it's kind of an easier rule to write that way. So that's kind of an overview on the alarm. The next thing that we wanted to show you, one that we have set up, we have one on the motion sensor where if we just go ahead and arm that, we have to wait for it to not see any motion. We can actually move this, and then again we'll have another push notification come in, not because of the motion that it sends, but more because we moved it, because it's got the accelerometer in it, so it knows it was moved, and it'll send us a push notification or an email because of that. So we'll go ahead and disarm that one, and we're set on that. That, I think, is kind of the basics as far as the demo goes. Actually, I take that back. There's one other important thing I wanted to show you. Excuse me. Right now, we're in this Your House screen. So when you look at your screen, it's showing you everything. It's going to show you all your devices, all your scenes, and they're sorted by rooms. One thing we can do is change over to the Rooms tab, and I really like this, and I'll show you why I'm a big fan of this. Right now, we have first what we call sections or areas, and then rooms built into it. So we have upstairs and main floor, a couple rooms within each of those. If I look at Office, we can see we have a light on here, a light icon. If I click that, all the lights in the office go out. And I didn't do any additional programming for that. If I had 2, 4, 6, or 10, no matter how many lighting devices I had in that room called Office, this is what Fibaro will do for you. Now, the other thing is, if I just turn one on, and we'll watch for that quick feedback that comes in because of our two-way setup with ZWave, now we have that icon come on. So really quickly, I can take a look at my system in this Rooms tab, whether I'm on the computer interface, which I'm on now, or the app looks very similar. I can look and say, oh, there must be a light on in the office. I just click that button, and that light goes off. If you kind of think back to some other systems that have like a Rooms type of programming, or maybe some more manual program that you would have had to do, this is really common stuff where people want to see at a glance from one area without having to look through every lighting load. Just show me by room if any room has any lights on. I can really quickly turn them off. So we can do that. That's one that I really like. In addition, in this Rooms area, I think the next thing to point out is we have these icons built in. That works two ways. Every icon that you see on your screen right now was built into the Fibaro system, and I just chose it. So, utility room, we stuck a washer, dining room, you kind of get the picture there. In addition, though, you can upload your own icons. So you can make a really customized system for your customer by taking a picture of that room, or any kind of other icon you might want to use. You can do that, and it kind of takes a system from really good to completely custom and just really well done, and it reflects well on you as the installer for doing it that way. In addition, we have some other areas across the top of each room that give you other bits of feedback. Bedroom, you can see the picture of the door and it's closed. If I open it, you'll actually see that go open. And then you also saw the light on over here because I have that rule written. So you get quick status there. We also get the temperature. So any temperature device in the room will report back. In this case, in the bedroom, I believe it's actually coming from the motion sensor. So this has the temp sensor built in, and we're showing it right here. If you have more than one temperature capable device in a room, when you set up the room, you can select which one you want to be the main temp sensor, and that's the one that's going to show up here. So we have that. And then in the kitchen, we have this icon here, and that's for motion. So it can see, I keep tripping the motion sensor because I'm standing here, so you see the motion icon on there. So that's a really cool part of the interfaces of rooms. And I really can't stress enough, I think, just how awesome this feature is. It does a lot for the system, and it's that, no matter how large your system gets as far as number of devices, it's a really concise way to look at it and to get a very quick glance at the overall status. So it's really cool for that. Then we have the devices. That's going to include scenes. Only show you physical devices, again, sorted by room. So we have that. We can go down and we can see thermostats here. This is a good example. And the one I wanted to show you, actually, you see these are outlined in red. That's because this device has a severely low battery. We did that on purpose to show you. So it's still working, but not only do you get the battery feedback down here, and it shows you how weak it is, you also get this red square around your device so that it really gets your attention. Now, there's a couple cool things about battery. We'll show you more when we get into the programming, but there's an option when you set up a new user in the system, or any user, to say, alert users of low battery. And if you check that box, any device that has a low battery, that user will get an email when they see that the battery's low. So we have that. Last thing here, then we'll get into our PowerPoint presentation, is we do have some cameras. This is a Spico camera, and it's an IP camera. It's a 2 megapixel. We have a lot of options, different choices we can make. And this is just down in our, kind of between our customer service and entry area. If I click the expand button, we'll get a slightly larger image from the camera, and that pops in, and you can see that. And then, in addition, we have a snapshot button here. What that does is, if you click that, whoever you are logged into the system as, whatever email address was used to set that user up, is going to get a snapshot of it. So if I click that, in about 2 seconds, we're logged in as our general, sales@worthless.com right now. So if I click that, in about 2 seconds, there will be an email in the inbox that shows that image of the snapshot at that time. Now, what's also cool is, like so many things we keep coming back to here, is through rules, I can do that same thing. So I can say, if the front door is armed and it gets breached, meaning somebody opens it, then take a snapshot of the front door camera and send it to this email address. So we're really going to the next level where we're not just notifying a user of access or entry being gained to the premise. We're giving them a picture of it. That could be an inside picture, an outside picture. You can send a couple. Just really cool the things you can do with it. All right, so that being said, we are going to hop back into our presentation for a moment here, and we'll run through that. Notice there's some questions, so why don't we go through and address those while we're at it. There's a question on 11 4-button controllers. They do learn into the system, and you can use them. What you want to watch out for that gets a little bit weird on that is the LED on there. So, the LED on the 4-button controller typically shows you the status of that scene. So if that scene is true, meaning all the lights in it are on or meet the scene criteria, that light's going to come on. If they're all off, it's going to be off. Doesn't really work that way in here because we're using it more of a generic sense rather than using it in that VisRF terminology. So yes, it will learn in, and you can initiate scenes from it, just that the LED status won't always be true. So at the moment, the only security system plugin that we're aware of, and we've looked through it fairly recently, is the DSC. The way that works, and we have a slide on that, but I'll go through it briefly. It's really pretty easy on that DSC system. You're going to use the IT100 module, which is the serial to keypad bus interface. Because it sits in the keypad bus, it knows everything that's going on in the system. It can arm and disarm. It can show you status of every single zone. It can even bypass zones. So everything you can do from a keypad, you can do from this module. Then we connect it through a global cache, which is going to be your serial to IP. And we add it, again, we'll show that to you in the interface, but really easy way to add it. And they show up just like security zones in the interface. Nice way to kind of bring that together. So, comparison of the Home Center 2 versus the Home Center Lite. The Home Center 2 is the larger controller. The Home Center Lite is going to be your more entry level. If you look through the table there, a couple of the differences, they both have the graphical scene editor. What the Home Center 2 has over the Home Center Lite is it can do the Lua programming. That's more of a text-based or a code-based programming. It's not for everybody, but if you're familiar with it, it can be very quick, and it can also get you some more advanced control over certain devices. Lili voice control. Think about Siri or Ask Google. This is something that's built into the Fibaro app, and it works on the Home Center 2. That's another advantage. The voice over IP server, when we have that built into the Home Center 2, so we can connect either over this Fibaro intercom app or IP phones like the Grandstream. We can actually connect right to it. It's built right into the Home Center 2. Plug-in support. So when we start to talk about Nest and DSC and raw sound, some of those plugins, they all work on Home Center 2. Home Center Lite gives you a limited offering of some of those plugins. The processor, as you can see, we've got a much more robust processor in the Home Center 2, so it does tend to handle larger deployments better, and it also tends to kind of run a little bit faster. And then the last thing is the Home Center 2 is exclusively for integrators. It is not going to be available in retail, and that's just the way it's always been and will be. User interfaces, we pretty much already went through the swipe and the button, but here's kind of just some of the specs on it so you've got them. You know, the really cool thing with the swipe is it's that picture frame form factor. It comes with both an AC adapter and 4 AA batteries. You can power it either way. One thing to watch out for, they'd like to point out, if you use the batteries, you've got to kind of put your hand in front of it once to wake it up and then make your gesture. When it's on plugged-in power, it just runs, it's always ready for your input. Then the button, again, you know, 6 different patterns, 8 different colors, and you can really just put it anywhere. RGBW controller. This is, you know, one of many of the control devices that Fibaro makes, but it's the one I wanted to highlight because it's unique and it's really cool. Very small device. It'll control either 12 volt or 24 volt RGBW, either like modules or strip lights, tape lights. What's pretty common for that is those RGBW tape lights, and then you're going to have a 12 volt wire, and then a wire for red, green, blue, and then for the white light. And it can make all the different colors for you. You can kind of see the screenshot there where you can select your color. But the other really cool thing is it's got some built-in kind of scenes, so you can make it look like a fireplace or like a stormy day, but then also you can create your own, and you can recall them through scenes and through programming. So it's a really neat way to get some, you know, different kinds of output from the system. ZWave capabilities. External antenna for improved range we talked about. Built-in network heal option, which is really neat. If you start to move devices around and you need to kind of rediscover the network, that's built in. But one really cool thing that Fibaro's got that we don't see on every single system is the option to heal specific devices. So the reason that's important is a network heal or rediscovery can take a long time, and we're talking maybe an hour or more depending on the size of the system. So if you have one device that's giving you problems, you can just go out there and try to heal that one specific device, and it's a lot quicker and just kind of an easier process. Include mode options. If you look at your the little screenshot excerpt we have there, there's a couple on there that are really important. One is if your device supports the newer network-wide inclusion, you're going to want to check that box, and that lets you include a device that may be further away from the hub than we can normally include. It'll include through devices that are already as a part of the system. Then the last one is to add in the security mode. Really simple on that. If you're doing a lock or a thermostat, you've got to check that box. If not, the inclusion doesn't work right. Reason for that is obviously the locks communicate securely so that nobody can kind of just hack in and get control of your lock from, you know, sitting out in the parking lot. Those actually are encrypted, and every communication that goes to the lock is secure through encryption. That's what we have to install. And same thing with the thermostats. We use the security mode to install the thermostats. I've got a note here about this discussion for legacy ZWave devices versus today's. And the reason I want to point this out is I don't want anybody who's had experiences with ZWave in the past. I mean, you know, 5 or more years ago, with some of the older style devices and the older way things were done, you might not have had the most positive experience, but I don't think you should let that experience really kind of have it cast any shadow over what we're doing today here. ZWave has come a long way from one thing, and also Fibaro as a manufacturer does a really good job of keeping on top of the newest technology from ZWave and really just being able to make this a very reliable system. So that being said, you know, can we do devices or ZWave networks in very large houses? We can. Part of that is through these remote gateways, which we'll get into in one of the upcoming slides. But even just as a more generic kind of a conversation, you know, those things you've had in the past of ZWave, or maybe a node will fall off the network, or you'd end up having to reprogram the network. We just don't have those problems with this. I think you know, the products that we're recommending here that we've done extensive testing on all work together really, really well and just do a really good job of making a robust system. And yes, it can be reliable in large deployments, and we're going to show you a little bit of that as we continue on here. What can we do with ZWave? Well, lighting we can do. You know, the scene class is certainly supported. We can do sensors. We can arm and disarm sensors, as I showed you in the demo, for different ways that we can make them operate based on their status. Thermostats we can do. Locks, one really cool thing with that is in Fibaro, we can enable a checkbox called hotel mode. When we get into hotel mode, that lets you start to say what users can control what devices. So I can have different people log in and be able to do different things. And then again, all these devices provide data to that room overview pane, and that's the one I was showing you before, where you get, you know, kind of those little icons room by room to tell you the status of the. Range testing, really cool. It's built into most Fibaro sensors. We can put a device like the flood sensor into that range testing mode, and based on how, as you start to walk away from the device, it keeps kind of pinging the gateway, that main hub, and as it does that, it'll tell you if it's in single shot, meaning it's tracking directly to the gateway. if it's hopping, meaning it might have to talk through one or two other devices to get there, or if it's out of range altogether. So it lets you know, based on the current setup you've got there, where you could put more devices. And it's a really easy thing to do when it's built into some of those sensors. Plugins. These are maintained by Fibaro to give you integration to some of these third-party systems we're talking about. Cameras. The one we showed was a Spico camera. Displays right on the main page. Cool thing about that is stick Spico DVR on that same network, NVR I should say, and at that point we can actually record the cameras, get full functionality, but still have that snapshot in the Fibaro. And like I was talking about earlier, you get that that scene capability. Say if somebody opens the front door and that sensor or the security system is armed, then let's have a picture, a still picture from that camera emailed right to me. Rough sound audio. We can control the system. And then we also have access through programming, and this is through the Lua code. We'll show you a little bit about that. But we can access the favorites, the transport controls, some of the volume settings, and the album art even comes right up on the Fibaro interface. Then the DSC security, we talked about how to connect that. Again, another really seamless integration system. Notifications. We showed you those earlier, but it's kind of hard to see on the camera, so here's some screenshots of them. These are both push notifications on an iOS type system. Similar on an Android, and also keep in mind that we can have email notifications as well. And you can also use email notifications to text also if you wanted to do it that way. Geolocation. Here's another really cool one. We get the question, well, how do I arm this, if I use Fibaro ZWave devices as sensors, how do I arm them if I'm leaving? Well, one really easy way to do that is, just based on geolocation. We can say when we leave, with a certain device, then we can actually arm that way. But probably more frequently what that's used for is kind of your daily routine. So you go to work in the morning, and then when you come back, maybe when you're 2 miles away or you're at a certain point on the way home, you'd like some certain lights to come on. Maybe you want the coffee maker to come on, whatever the case is. We can do that and actually do that by geolocation. So the way we do that is to go into this geolocation panel in the Fibaro system. We can actually set up locations right on the map, and then in programming we can say, when this specific device gets near this specific location, do this, run a scene or whatever the case is. And that's specific to the device. So you'll see you've got 5 iPhones and an Android device that connects to the Fibaro system. You're going to see them each show up in the list, and then it does that automatically for you. So the cool thing with that is, the geolocation isn't just overall in general. It's got to do more with, what device hits what location, and then you can start to program based on that. How small of a range can the geolocation go to? We've tested it down to like when you get near the house, you're not really going to get like inside and outside of the house. But again, that's not really up to Fibaro. That depends on how accurate your location services are, and it depends how you're using your phone. Do you have Wi-Fi or not? How many cell towers are in the area? Are you in range of your own Wi-Fi? There's a lot of factors that have to do with that. Again, it's not so much a Fibaro thing. It's more of a, how accurate is the location services on your device at that time. Good. Gateway connections. This is a really cool one. It's one that we've been doing some pretty extensive testing with, and we're really excited about. It lets us connect multiple home centers over IP. The really cool thing about that is each one creates its own ZWave network. So when people used to come to us and say, I've got a 10,000 square foot house I'm working on, should I put ZWave in it? Well, if we're going to use one primary controller, one ZWave controller, the answer honestly would be no. With Fibaro, it would be, yeah, absolutely, and here's how we would do it. So we'd stick a home center 2 in our main location. We like most of the devices to be in the home center 2 if we can help it. Again, it's the faster device, bigger processor. And also we're going to need at least one of the home centers to be a home center 2 because it's the one that handles the coordination of all the different gateways. Then we take the home center Lite, and we can put multiples of them in the house. So maybe we stick one in the west side of the house or one on a different floor. Depending on how the house is laid out, we start to put multiples of those in. Then when we get to the home center 2, there's this gateway area in the configuration, and you can hit add gateway. It'll actually go out on the network, find all the other Fibaro home centers. You click on them, put in the username and password that you set on it, and then you get the opportunity to, at that point, to bring in the devices. So what I would do is put your home centers in, don't link them together yet, set them all up individually and set up all the devices on them, and then at the end, you bring in your remote gateway, and it'll say, do you want me to bring in the devices in the rooms that are set up on that? You say, yes, I do. At that point, you bring them in, and you'll see them come right up and act as one system. The reason this is really neat, and we'll get into a little bit more of this as we get into the programming back in the screenshots, what's cool about this is no matter what device or what gateway your device is on, they all act together. So first of all, when you look at the Fibaro user interface, you can have a room that's on the home center light, but you're actually on the interface for the home center too, and it's all seamless. It's all there in one display. In addition to that, scenes or rules can cross gateways. So I can have it so that when a door window sensor that's opened on my home center light, I can have that turn on a light that's in my home center too. So completely, just completely brings those together. It makes them act like one big system. And even for the installer, once you link those gateways, it's not like you're looking for this home center or that home center. All the devices show up in one big list. It's like one big system. It's very easy to work on. If we take this to the next level, say you have a main house and then there's a guest house, but it's connected over a network. Stick a home center light in that guest house, name it guest house, and bring those devices together. And you can start to do all your programming again based on one big system. So really, really cool feature there. Lets you do, again, to summarize that, not just larger homes, but properties where homes are linked together. DSC security integration, I think we've kind of covered that already. AV system control, again, we use that global cache device, and we'll get into the Fibaro app in a second and show you how that works. And then lastly, the intro kit. We want to talk to you about that real quick. So what we have going on here, and this is through the support of all the vendors that are involved in this, so we thank them for their help. We've got a discounted system going on for any dealer that would like to try this for yourself. So you're going to get the Fibaro Home Center 2, a flood sensor, a door window sensor, a motion sensor, the swipe controller, and then the button plus a lock. There's a lot going on here, but you'll get the list in an email later. A couple dimmers, a couple plugins, and then the Rustsound X Zone 4. That's the 4-zone streamer with amplifiers built in, and you save about $700 off of regular dealer price. So this is one per dealer, and it's one of those things where we would like to do our best to get this in your hands so you can have the same experience we've had, which is just to learn what a cool system this is. So we've got that going on for you as well. I'm going to get back to my screen share now, and we'll show you a couple more things about programming. And we are back in the Fibaro interface here. And we're going to show you a little bit about how our scenes are set up. So we're going to go to the scenes area. And we have one called front door breached. And this is one that I demoed earlier, but I can show you how the scene actually works. So the first thing you're going to get is this general tab, and that's just your opportunity to name it and put it in a room. To cover that really briefly, it is important that every scene is named so you know what it is. And it's also important to stick it in a room. If you don't, it just gets stuck in a generic bucket, so to speak, called unassigned, and they'll all be there. So there's kind of two ways you can do this. If you stick a scene in the room that its devices are in, then you've got the ability to kind of see your devices and your scenes all in one. But some of these scenes don't really get interacted with by the user. It's not like hit a button to turn on a bunch of lights. The scene might be more for automation routine. So when the front door is open, then turn on these lights. In that case, if it's a scene that you don't interact with, you might want to bury it in a room called scenes. You can just have them all in there, and you can hide them so your customer doesn't see them. So just something to think about there. Again, scene hidden down here means you can still program it, but you don't have to see it in your list. So this is what Fibaro calls their block programming. This is the middle of the 3 different ways to do scenes. The basic one is called magic scenes. We'll show you those in a moment. This is going to be called your block scenes, and then you have the Lua code where you actually code it. This is the one that, for me anyway, I typically kind of deal with because I think it's a good combination between easy to work with but gives you a lot of options. So the first thing we did is we defined a trigger. We said the front door equals breached and armed. So let's take a look at all the options there. We can have it be armed or disarmed, breached or safe. Again, safe means the door is closed, breached means it's opened. You have breached and armed, breached and disarmed. And then we have safe and armed, safe and disarmed, tamper, meaning that tamper button on the back that makes sure it's still on the wall, and those kind of features there. Just take a run through these. When I first started doing this, I fully intended to have to say, when the front door is open and when the front door is armed, then send me this push notification that it's been opened. What's really cool is they've actually got that built in there for you. So if I use this breached and armed, what happens then is if you've hit the arm button and the door has been opened, then you have the ability to send out these text notifications. So that's what I've got here. I say when it's breached and armed, I turned on 2 different lights. Those are my lights that were inside the house. Then I have another AND command on the bottom, and I do a push notification, which lets me hit this front door breached message, and it comes to my phone. That's how we have that set up. So let's take another step back here. We're going to go into Panels, and then notifications panel. So when you're going to start getting into this area where you write scenes that that push out notifications to your users, you're going to want to go into the notification panel. And here are the ones that I've already set up on the side. So we have one called front door breached. So I named it, and I give it content. First thing to kind of cover off the bat is, yes, you do need to type something in each of these 3 blocks. Yes, they can be different, but they don't have to be. And the SMS, that's really a European feature. We really don't have access to that. Just make sure you type something in there so that you've got it. Email content and push content are then chosen when you set up the scene. So for me, I just say front door breached in each of them. Now, if I go back to scenes, and I go to front door breached, you can see what I did here was that I said, again, when the front door is breached and armed, I can push to my phone this message called front door breached. And I have this whole list in here of all the different ones that I can use. So that's one scene. That's a fairly easy one. If we look at one of the more advanced ones, and we talked about how to work with the Rust sound earlier, if I come down here to one called Rust Sound Favorite 4, this is one, and we have the codes. We can send that to you. We actually got them right from Adam at Fibaro. But if we go in here, you can see we have a really simple one line of code that we got right from a document from Fibaro, and it just says to play that favorite number 4. So you can have these favorites stored in Rust Sound that the user can then define on their own, and you're just calling them back up. But the really cool thing about Fibaro favorite or Rust Sound favorites is even if the system is off and you bring up a favorite, it's going to turn the system on and go right to that favorite and start playing. So we can do that really easily. And you can see now, any way I want to on the system, whether it's from the button or the swipe, I can initiate these favorites. So we've got that. I'm going to go back to devices for a second and show you one of the more simple things we can set up. This looks more like the magic scene. So I'm going to go into the setup for my button. And if I scroll down, you'll see it gives me each of my options. So the first thing to notice is keep an eye on the button for a second. If I push it once, you'll see the ×1 come on. And it stays there for a second. I hope you're getting that on the screen. Yeah, it looks like that's coming through. If I hit it, let's say 3 times, you get a ×3. So it lets you test and see what's going on. But then down here, we have the setup for it. So I already have the 1, 2, and 3 set up. Let's go ahead into the 4 press, and I'll show you how that works. So when we hit 4, we're going to hit New Reaction. And it says, select the device. What do you want to do? Well, I can set out a notification. I can turn on a light. I have a couple devices down here or scenes that I want to do. So I'm going to select this lights off, actually. If I do that, I can hit next, say run the scene, next, and we're done. So now when I hit it 4 times, it's going to run that scene. Let's delete that now. Yes, I'm sure. And we're going to take a look at a slightly more complicated one. I'm going to select just my recessed light. And this is what I started to describe earlier. Remember, if I hit turn on, I can only ever turn that device on. Now, what I could do is say, tap it once to turn it on, tap it twice to turn it off. That's certainly doable. But what I thought was kind of cool was this opposite state. So now, no matter what the light's doing, when I tap this button 4 times, it's going to put this light in the opposite state it's in, or I was calling it a toggle. So we have that. So that's really cool in the button. If we go back to our devices again, and we take a look at our swipe, looks similar. So see here, instead of number of presses, we have swipe up, swipe down, swipe left, swipe right, and we also have this make a circle to the right and there's make a circle to the left. So I can do that, and you can see here, this is how I have it. So when I swipe on that unit, it locks and unlocks my door. So we've got that. So that's a pretty brief overview of scenes, but I think it kind of covers the majority of what we've got going on there. I'd like to show you a couple more things in the plugins now. I think Nest came up, so we'll look at that one really quick. So for us, here are the plugins that we have installed. You see we're using Rust Sound, we're using Speako, we're using a couple. And I have the weather located up on there. But if I go to Available, and I'm just going to start to search for Nest. Let's see here. So I think we've got the Nest in there already. But basically, what you're going to do with the Nest plugin is you can put in your I'll show you on the Rust Sound actually. It's a pretty similar setup. In Nest, you just put in your username and password for your Nest account, and it's going to come right up. if I look at rust sound, I look at the settings, I can actually go in. This shows me kind of a preview of what I'm going to get. If I go to advanced, let's go back here. We can hit the IP address of it, and we can set the rust sound up right there. So this is the one I already have set up, so it's already in there. If we go to, go back to plugins, and we're going to look at the DSC plugin for a moment. And configuration. I can hit add a control panel, and then again, I'm going to have my IP address. The port, that is a default port, and you can look that right up on the for the global cache actually. And then you're going to put in a user code. So at that point, we connect right up to the DSC system, and it would start to read the names out of it, and you can get a complete system in there. So that's just a couple of the plugins. A couple of things on the panels that I can show you that we kind of talked about. If we look at the localization, which we would call the geolocation panel, this is where we can kind of scroll in and out. We can put a new pin in, we give it a name, and then hit save location. And then later in programming, we can say, you know, when Joe's Android phone gets near this location, run this scene or do this series of events. That's a real quick one on locations. Voice over IP panel, that's the SIP server that we discussed earlier. And you can see here the ones we have set up. So basically, any user that you set up in the system, we'll go to users in a second, any user gets an account automatically. If there are, like if there's an IP phone that you want to add that doesn't have a user associated with it, create your own extension, so to speak, right from here. And then when you log into the Fibaro app, you can actually select any user you want to call and use this as an intercom system. Really cool for that, and also you can add different front door stations to it and have it call them, and kind of have a built-in intercom system. So we've got that built in. Let's go over to some basic configuration stuff at this point. This is going to, excuse me, going to give you the serial number and the MAC address of your home center 2. You can decide what weather provider you want to use, and your temp sensor, and just some more basic ideas there. If there's a new version of firmware available, a couple things will happen. First of all, there's actually a dedicated LED on the front of the home center 2 that will light up. But you can also look here. You see now there's a beta available that we didn't grab because it just came out, and we've got to have some set testing going on. But you can grab betas or production versions right from here. Access control is the terminology for users. So if we go to access control, this is where we add and remove users. For any user that we have on here, so we'll go and look at ours. We can see, are we allowed to send notifications to it? Yes, we are. Here's one that says ask for PIN when the user wants to arm a sensor. So in my case, you notice when I hit arm, it just went ahead and armed. But when and it didn't ask you for a PIN, it only asked me when I disarmed. This is how you can control it if you want to go either way. This text box here is where I set the PIN. I put 1, 2, 3, 4 in. This is where I set that. How frequently should it measure the GPS location? So here we can put not at all or how often. That also tends to have to do with how accurate you can be, is how often we're looking at it. So you can keep that in mind too. Then we start to go down is, what devices is this user allowed to sign in on? We have that option. And if we hit enable hotel mode, we have another option come up that will actually let you select what devices that user can get into. So we've got that. We're just going to go over the major ones here. Backup recovery is actually really cool. You can run a backup of the system. It's stored on a separate storage device in the home center too, and it lets you, should you ever have any kind of a problem, lets you restore it. A really cool way to do that. Gateway Connect is another really nice one. You can see here I have an HCL, which stands for Home Center Lite. It's on this IP address, and it's linked up to my system. So if I go to import, we'll go to advanced so I can show you some of the options. These are the devices that are on that device. If I hit save, and they're already here for me, if I hit save, it's going to pull them in and bring them into my system. So really simply, that's how we put these two devices or these two home centers together to make one larger system. ZWave Network. This is where we talked about how to configure devices again, and then how to go down and do controller transfer, add a secondary if you want. But it's also where we get to go and do some of the more advanced things like to go ahead and do the network heal, the rediscover. We can do that from this area. So we've got that option going. A couple of last things I can show you before we kind of sign off here with you. Here is where we have our rooms. If we hit add new, this is really one of your first steps. We have an existing system. Section to me would be a floor. So first floor, basement, main area, second floor, or you might say guest house or playroom, whatever the case is. These are kind of sections. What I would say is a section can have rooms in it. That's kind of how you determine this. So we can add a section, then we can add a room and say what section it's in. So that's how we got to our devices and how they were kind of laid out. If I go back over to my rooms again, and I want to set up one of those rooms, I can go to settings. And this is where I was starting to talk about earlier. I can change the icon, or what temp sensors do we want to use. So if I go back to, let's see, the utility room, the main temperature sensor is the one that I called temp sensor. If I had more than one in there, so if I had a motion sensor and a flood sensor in there, I could select either one of them to be my actual temp sensor. So we've got that going on there too. We can look really quickly at the camera. I'll show you how that gets set up. We just went and added a Spico camera from the plugins. Then once it was there, we have the option to go, and you can see it's coming up. We go to advanced, we can put in the IP address for it, and then the username and the password. And if you go down lower, you can see this is what Fibaro is doing for you with the plugins. You could manually figure out what the JPEG stream and the MJPEG stream is and put it in there and make it work as a generic camera, but they've already done that work for you, and all you have to do is say, yeah, it's a Spico camera, and here's how we put it in. Other cool things, I'm not going to bring it up because there's so much. If you hit search, that's going to do, if anybody's used Fing, and where you can see a list of all the devices on your network, it's kind of like that. I can hit search, and it'll show me everything on my network, and I can pick it out in case I didn't remember what its IP address is, just kind of off the top of my head. So we have that. Last thing is consumption. We don't have one on this system, so you're not going to see too much of it. There's one device that measures power around here since we see a very low reading. My personal recommendation, and there's a couple ways to do this, you don't have to do any energy monitoring at all. The other option is you can have ZWave devices that have energy monitoring built in. Some wall switches have it, some plugins have it. The last option, which is my preference, is to use a whole house energy meter. It's an Aeon Labs or an AOTech part, pretty inexpensive. It's got the split core clamps on it, so you can actually put it on the main power coming into the main panel on that house or on that electric service. And it's now monitoring the A phase and the B phase all the time and sending that data back. So now when you look at this meter here, this dial, you're going to see instantly what kind of power usage you're using. And if you scroll down further, you'll actually start to get comparisons with the temperature, and you can actually get into the historical data here and look at graphs. So to me, I think this is a really good way to keep an eye on your energy usage. And again, I would recommend the whole house one. Reason being is not every device is going to have an energy monitor on it. So I think if you take and put an energy monitor on a light switch, okay, there's 3 10-watt LED bulbs in there, so it's 30 watts. It's pretty much always going to be 30 watts. Yeah, it's a little less when you dim it. Maybe one of them gets, burns out at some point. But for the most part, you kind of know what that usage is anyway. For me, I'm more interested in seeing what the overall usage is, and I can watch for spikes there. So say, we were at so many kilowatt hours yesterday, but it's, maybe 50% more today. Why? What's going on? Did the air conditioning kick on and I didn't know it? Is there some device using a ton of power? Then you can start to go investigate it from there. So that's pretty cool. The other thing you'll get is your energy usage is always showing up here on the top on this kind of information bar. So you've got that. It tells you what scenes are running, tells you how many lights are on or off, and then also if any device has a low battery condition, that'll show up here. And if you click on it, it'll tell you which device it is that's got a low battery condition. And we've got a couple just so we wanted to show you what that looks like. Last thing I would mention, we do have a weather input up here. When we first set up the system, and there's actually a wizard that comes up when you first power it up, you give it your zip code and it pulls the weather right in off the internet for you. What's cool about that is, yes, I'm getting real-time weather display here, but in addition, I can use that in programming. So I can say, when it's raining, turn off the sprinklers, or if it's windy, close the shutters, or close the maybe an awning, a motorized awning you might have. A lot of cool things we can do based on the weather data, and it doesn't require you to install actual weather sensors or weather station. It's coming right off the internet, which these days is, I think we all probably agree that that is pretty accurate data, and you get to use it now in your scenes. So I'm going to go back to the main screen here. At this point, let me go back over to the presentation, and we will start to take questions. Let me get back in there. Okay, so if anybody has any questions, please go ahead and type them in the chat box, and we'll go ahead and answer them one by one as they come in. Okay. Connor, thank you for joining us. Gary, will the system interface with Rachio? I don't believe we have a direct, Adam, if you're still on, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe we have a direct interface for that, but what Fibaro does have is it's got a built-in, and I can actually show you that one here. Let me get back over to that screen for you guys. If we go back into panels, we have a, sorry guys, let me get back into the screen share here. And we'll go back to Fibaro. We have one called a, let me find it here, sprinklers panel. So at that point, you know, we can start to choose what devices are sprinklers. You can have some relays that are built in, and then you can, you know, go through a number of days. And if you have a rain delay, you can say more or less water. So this is, we can kind of spend a whole other hour just on the sprinkler panel, but there is one built in. If that kind of related to your question, so I wanted to show you that. Let me get back over here. We'll get to the next question. Will the Fibaro read a ZWave network? Well, so I guess, you know, we do have the option to kind of to transfer control. We have not tested that one specifically. I would say you would probably want to decide which one you want to be your gateway and kind of pick one or the other, at least per application. Let's see here. What else do we have? Plans for Lutron support. Jason, that's a great question. That's one that we have requested. I have not gotten feedback recently as for where it stands in development schedule, but it's one that we've asked for. We hear you on that one. I think it's a great idea, and we'll keep you posted. But it's one that we have put in on ask for. Fibaro and 2 gig. Mark, could you elaborate on that? What do you want to see there? As far as integration, you know, if we're talking about integration, there isn't at the moment. You know, kind of different systems. Right now, the security system of choice is the DSC. Oh, mainly from a ZWave standpoint, yeah. So I believe one of the most recent firmware updates in 2 gig was to add ZWave as a secondary, so you can do that. Yeah. Support for Omni is not in there, and honestly, that's one where you know you'd kind of want to choose one or the other. So in this case, you know, I think Fibaro has much broader ZWave support. You know, some of those kind of things. Adam, let me see. Yeah, Adam, I see you're still on. Could you help us with Skybell, Ring, and Doorbird? Could you let us know about those 3? Yeah, and Nest, Adam. I just if you're still out there with us too, we know Nest is in there. I just don't know why I didn't see it today. Because Nest is one we've used in the past. We didn't have it on this demo system, but on our trade show display, we have it on all the time. And like I said, it's as easy as typing in your username and password, the same as you would log into the Nest app, and they just show up and they start to work. For the record, I keep referring to Adam. Adam Jablonski is the head U.S. systems engineer for Fibaro. So he's based in Chicago. And he is our technical contact at Fibaro. So just to give him a little bit of an intro, he's joined us today. Zigbee or Bluetooth support? No, not at the moment. However, when we talk about Bluetooth devices, we do start to see usually those are cloud enabled. So you know, things like you know, certain Bluetooth devices that have a gateway that you can get to them from the web. You start to see as they gain in popularity, Fibaro typically adds plugins for those. Ecobee thermostats, I do believe I've seen that in the list before. This is a good point. We have a Adam. Thanks for the heads up on the linked devices. There's another panel called linked devices. It lets us put devices together, and that's one way that we can say, you know, when there's maybe a button gets pressed at the front door, you know, any doorbell button or a ZWave enabled doorbell button, we can link that to a camera and then kind of bring those up at the same time when somebody presses the doorbell. Gary's putting us on the spot. Fibaro versus Zapato. You know, here's kind of where it comes down to. I think they both have a really neat niche, so to speak, and different things that they kind of specialize in. What's cool with Fibaro? I'm sorry. Let me start with Zapato. What's cool there is, you know, yeah, they've got the touchscreen, the Zip-a-Tile, all in one. That's a pretty neat device. We see that in multifamilies getting popularity there. The other neat thing about Zapato is they have a pretty cool user setup where you can say, you know, who can get to what system. We can link systems together, make one person an administrator for multiple systems, but all within one interface. So that's nice about them. Where I would say Fibaro kind of excels is in a couple areas. Number one, I mean, the user interface is just killer. What I showed you guys today was the web interface, but again, like I said, the iPhone and Android app is very similar, very rich from a graphic standpoint, really easy to use, and when you hand that to an end user, they're usually really impressed. Really nice interface, it does a lot. The other thing we like very much with Fibaro is they are doing a really nice job of supporting all the right devices from a plugin standpoint, from a you know, ZWave standpoint, so we like that. ZWave reliability on Fibaro, just off the charts. You know, this is one where we set the system up, and we do a lot of testing on ZWave on a lot of the systems we deal with. We can set this thing up, leave it sit for days without touching it, power it down, put it away, bring it back out, put all the same stuff together, and every time we do it, it works. We haven't had a single device fall off the network. Nothing that we hadn't had anything happen that was unexpected. You know, no problems, no issues. So it's very reliable from that standpoint. And again, I think the thing I'd really highlight with Fibaro is when you use, from a Z-Wave standpoint, their devices. Yeah, I recommend Leviton for the lighting. You know, we recommend Russound for the audio, DSC if you want to do that kind of security system. But for the sensors, you know, we can support just about anybody's Z-Wave sensors. What's nice with the Fibaro sensors, though, is really nice design. Yet they are a little bit of a price premium, but they look good. They come in really good packaging, and like I said, most of them do multiple functions. The other nice thing is they show up with their own picture on the user interface, which is actually kind of cool. So the end user can kind of make that connection between where it says flood sensor, it looks like a flood sensor, versus kind of just an image. So we've got that. Any option for announcements or voice alerts? I'm not sure about voice alerts. What we can do, though, is we can use different sirens. There are a couple, like AOTech has a siren with a couple different tones on it. We can use that and at least get, so I know that's not a voice, but we can get different sounds. We call those sirens, but keep in mind some of them have multiple tones that aren't quite so obnoxious as like a security or burg siren. You can actually get more like you know, doorbell tones almost out of it. Smoke sensor coming when? You know, Adam could elaborate on that. Last I heard on that is it's just going through agency listing, and I know that takes a while, so we're looking at that. Advantages of Russound integration versus Sonos. What are the advantages? So from an integration standpoint, they're really very similar. You know, we have an interface on the Fibaro that controls the Russound or controls the Sonos. The reason we're fans of Russound, and I think, you know, to kind of take a more generic stab at this, not just because we're a Russound distributor, but Russound is you're really good to their dealers. You're not going to find the Russound stuff on the internet. One concern we hear from time to time from Sonos dealers is, you know, they install it and then Sonos goes and contacts their customer directly. You know, I'm not here to really have that political discussion, but you know, we've heard of that happening. With Russound, you know, Russound products are built for installers and for integrators, and for that reason, we really like it. A little more custom system, but Russound has come a long way in the last couple of years with really keeping up with the media streaming, making sure they have the right streaming services. The app is just killer, and now to see it work together with this and do things like, you know, swipe on the gesture input panel and have that actually control audio, you know, it's really cool. A lot of cool stuff we can do with that. How does the reliability of Z-Wave light switches and outlets compare with UPB? That's a fantastic question. So, you know, I don't really have anything bad to say about either, but just to give you kind of the, you know, kind of the no-nonsense comparison, to be honest, you know, UPB is a signal that's sent over the power line. So there are not too many applications where it happens. However, you can run into an application where a certain amount of noise in the power line, typically in larger installations, larger size houses, let's just say, or if you have a lot of sub-panels, you can start to run into issues where you have signal problems. And you've got to find those. Usually it can be corrected, whether it's the addition of a coupler or a repeater or a filter maybe. It can be corrected, but it's a lot of work to get there. Z-Wave sure, it's a radio signal. However, what's cool about Z-Wave, and again, like I said, if if you've used Z-Wave 10 years ago or 5 years ago, and you're looking at it again today, it's a different animal. It's a just much more reliable, much more installer-friendly system. It's a mesh network, so the more devices we have within reason, in a given space, in a given area, the more reliable it gets, because each device has multiple options, multiple paths to get to that signal from where it's started to where it's going to. So you've got that. In addition, when you start to take this remote gateway functionality that Fibaro's got, right down to where I can put multiple, which you actually have there if you're familiar with Z-Wave, it's a primary controller. So when we talk about remote gateway, multiple primary controllers. So it's really cool that we can have multiple networks running in a really big house, but have them operate together as one. So as far as reliability goes, I really have no concerns recommending Z-Wave. It's really rock solid. And again, I think Fibaro as a controller does a really good job of managing that Z-Wave network. Let's see here. Jason, I agree. Thanks for that. Super reliable. Glad to hear that. Yeah, and it is fast. I showed you guys a couple of those. How that works. Let me go back one more time on the remote gateways in case I missed something on that. Let me go back to devices. So as I scroll all the way down, I have this area called guest house and a room called entry. Everything you see here is actually on the home center light over here. So I am in this browser. I'm logged into the home center 2, this controller here, and that's where we are. However, these devices were added into the home center light over here, and they're all together. So I can really easily, and you can see, if I open the door, instantly you see that change. So what I have is from here over is one Z-Wave network, and from here over is a separate Z-Wave network, but they're working together as one. So not only do we have really super good reliability within its own network, if we get too big, if you come to us and say, I think I threw the number out, 10,000 square foot house, I would not recommend you doing that with one Z-Wave network. They're probably going to be too spread out. You might have too many devices. It's going to take too long for the hop to get from one side to the other, and you kind of run the risk of setting yourself up for problems. We would, in that case, work with you to try to figure out what's the right number of controllers, how many should we put in, and then bring them all together. And like I said, I can have, when this door opens, I can have it turn on, this light, which is on a whole different system. So it's solid. It's a great way to run it. Jason wants Fibaro to get Amazon Echo support. We'll let Adam answer that one if he has any input, but beta test. All right. If there are any other questions, go ahead and put those in there. Otherwise, we'll. Oh, here we go. Okay, so Fibaro's working on the smoke sensor. We have some options there. There are also some different ways through Z-Wave. There are some different products we can use that sense the sound that the smoke detector makes. We can integrate it that way. Just a couple ways to do it. Nest Protect. Adam, could you let us know when you use the Nest plugin, do you get the thermostats and the Protect? Bar Smoke is cool looking, and it's tiny. It's a nice product. I agree with that. Okay, so Nest requested a change in the plugin, so they're working on it. That's why we'll see it reposted shortly then. Okay, looks like we're probably wrapped up with questions. If any more come in, I'll stop and address them. But in closing, first thing, big thanks to Adam for joining us today and helping us out with some of those questions. Great to have you on, Adam, and thanks for your help with the things we had that we didn't have the answer right off the top of our head for. Moving forward, guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to email us to sales@worththis.com or give us a call. We've got a ton of experience with this product at this point, but if there's anything that we can answer, we'll go ahead and get that answer from Fibaro for you and get it right back to you. We're happy to do that. In addition, Jason forgot one thing. We'll keep an eye out for that. later today, we'll send out an email that's just got some kind of wrap-ups. Somfy blind support. Yeah, so any blind that's or shade that's motorized, I'm with you, Jason. Anything that's Z-Wave enabled in the blind side of things, and we know from working with some of the Somfy ones, they show up as a lighting unit. So what's pretty cool about that is, when you add that to your system, it's going to look just like a light bulb. And although what's really nice with Fibaro is they'll let you change the icons. You can change it over to a shade. And 100% on is all the way open, 100% off is all the way closed, and in between. A couple other real quick notes on that. The Somfy Z-Wave is fine. ESI has a really nice Z-Wave interface for what we call dumb motors, they're just limit switch motors, and then this controller gives you infinite control of it as a percentage. And the Fibaro's also got one they call the roller shutter, so you can use that on shades as well. All right, then in closing, again, I really thank you guys. We spent about an hour and a half here, which is longer than we normally do, so we really thank you for spending the time. Thanks for working through the camera issues with us. We're going to take a look at that for next time. But and there we go. So thanks a lot for joining us, guys. The different stuff that we went through, and kind of some tips and a little bit of a wrap-up. So thanks again. And thank you, everybody. All right, have a good day, and we'll talk to everybody soon.